So I always love when people come up to me and say, "You don't look like a Morris." To which I understand them saying, "You don't look like my 85-year-old uncle." The truth is, for the first 21 years of my life, I didn't go by the name Morris. May that be the most scandalous thing you ever learn about me. For the first 21 years of my life, I went by the name Benjamin. My parents, he looks like a Benjamin, doesn't he? Right? My parents named me Morris Benjamin, but made the decision from day 8 to call me by my middle name. Now, Morris was my maternal grandfather, and he had passed away in a few months before I was born. So they wanted to honor his memory by giving the first name slot to his name. But as my mother tells the story, it was too fresh of a wound, it was too painful and recent of a loss to then call me by that name. And so they named me Morris Benjamin, but they called me Benjamin. So for 21 years throughout college, I went by Benjamin and its diminutive forms. And here's what happened. As a graduation gift from college, my parents gave me this 12-page document, written originally on a typewriter. You can see, if you look closely, you can see the font. And on these 12 pages are the story of my maternal grandparents, Sophie and Morris. It's a little bit of background about their life in Poland before the war, and then a great deal of detail about how they survived the Shoah. And then the remaining 3 or 4 pages tell the story of the German DP camp, and then ultimately their travel to America and the creation of a new life in America. So they gave me this short biography of my grandparents as a graduation gift from college, and I read it for the first time on the second day of Rosh Hashanah following graduation from college. And it was in that moment, the truth is I didn't know a whole lot about my grandfather Morris. He passed away, as I said, before I was born. My grandmother didn't speak a lot about her experiences in the Holocaust, but over the years, through various conversations and interviews that my parents conducted, primarily with my grandmother, but a little with my grandfather, my dad had enough information to try to capture as much of their story as was possible, to document it, and then to give it to me as a gift. So there I am on Rosh Hashanah reading this story, moved by the story of the man for whom I'm named after, and made the decision in that moment to go by the name Morris. So that's how I became Morris. I was always Morris. But I grew into it, and it's really thanks to one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. All right, now I'm going to tell you an analogous story from our tradition, and I'm going to walk you through the sources here, and I think by the end of this teaching, I hope it'll be clear why I opened up with this personal story I just shared. So we start with verses a verse from last week's Parsha, and then a verse from many months from now in Numbers. But you'll see that what they have in common is the inclusion of a particular name. So let's go through these verses. Genesis 46, this is mid-idea. The Torah is listing in genealogical fashion the names of Jacob's sons primarily and grandsons, also a daughter and some grandchildren, who are making the trek from the land of Israel to Egypt after Joseph has revealed his identity, and the people are making their way to Egypt where there is ample food. So this is in the middle of a list. The Torah records Asher's sons, Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, and Beriah, and their sister Serach. All right, so far nothing so extraordinary. I mean, it's slightly unusual, unfortunately, for the Torah to record the presence of a female in the list of important names to record, but so far we just have the name of Asher's daughter, Serach. Now fast forward to the next text, Numbers 26. This is now Parshat Pinchas. Moses has been instructed to conduct a census of all of the Israelites, ages 20 and over, and the text specifically says to conduct a census of all the males who are able to bear arms, right? This is approaching the time where the Israelites are going to cross into the land of Israel, and a big battle awaits them. So the Torah is listing all of the names of the males who seem to be those who will be enlisted in the battle in Canaan. Descendants of Asher by their clan, of Imnah, the clan of Imnites, of Ishvi, the clan of Ishvites, of Beriah, the clan of Beriites. Those names should look familiar from the Genesis 46 text. Of the descendants of Beriah, of Heber, the clan of Heberites, of Malchiam, the clan of Malchites. And now here we go. The name of Asher's daughter was Serach. All right, what's strange here? All right, so one thing that's strange is, once again, the inclusion of a female name in what is ostensibly a list of males who will be conscripted to fight in a few years. But even stranger, at least according to the rabbis who interpret these verses, is that the text seems to be talking about the same person. The same person who went into Egypt before the period of enslavement began is now being mentioned in a live census of people who have survived 400 plus years of slavery and are in the midst of 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. So it seems to imply, there's already a midrashic move here, but it seems to imply, the rabbis say, that we're referencing a person who has been alive for, let's say, at least 400 plus years, which is strange, and even strange by biblical standards, because really after the first few chapters of Genesis, where people live 900, 1,000 plus years, the maximum age in the Torah is 120. So we have someone who's clearly breaking the rules, and the rabbis love that. So what the rabbis are going to do, by the way, these are the only two mentions of this name in the entirety of Torah. This is all we have about this character, Serach, daughter of Asher. So the rabbis are going to spin a series of tales which insert this character who lived from the time of the patriarchs through the time at least of the travels in the wilderness. They're going to spin a series of tales that insert her into crucial moments in our story. She becomes, I want to suggest, a holder and then revealer of hidden or potentially lost knowledge. She is the revealer and holder of potentially lost knowledge. So we're going to look at a couple of midrashim that build on that theme. All right, you with me? Okay. So this one is from Midrash Hagadol. It's a collection of midrashim. This also speaks to something that happened in last week's Parsha. As you recall, Joseph reveals his identity to his brothers, and then he sends them back to the land of Israel with wagons and carriages to retrieve their father Jacob, to tell Jacob that he's indeed still alive, and to come back to Egypt where they'll be rewarded and taken care of. So the brothers realize that this isn't actually such a simple task. They're going to tell their father that their brother, who they told their father many years ago was killed by a wild beast, they're going to say he's actually alive. How will the father receive that news? What follow-up questions will they ask? How might that implicate them? You can imagine the complexities that the brothers might have felt in thinking about how to tell their father. So they come up with a brilliant idea. Let's have someone else do it. So here's what the text reads. The brothers said, if we tell him right away, Joseph is alive, Od Yosef Chai, perhaps he will have a stroke. Literally, the text says his soul will fly away. So what did they do? They said to Serach, daughter of Asher, tell our father Jacob that Joseph is alive and he's in Egypt. So what did she do? She waited until he was standing in prayer and then said in a tone of wonder, Yosef b'Mitzrayim yoldu lo al birkayim Menashe ve'Ephraim. That's how I hear it. Right? Rhyming, sung phrase that means Joseph is in Egypt. There have been born on his knees Menashe and Ephraim, the two sons of Yosef. There's another text that also tells a similar story. It's in a different collection of Midrash that says that she sang it while accompanied by a harp. And she just kept on repeating it while Jacob was immersed in prayer. Jacob's heart failed while he was standing in prayer. When he finished his prayer, he saw the wagons. Immediately, the spirit of Jacob came back to life. What a fabulous story. Right? Serach, again, there's nothing in the text, the two psukim, the two verses that we read from Genesis and Numbers, that would imply any additional information is available about who this woman is, what kind of person she is, what her skills are, what her special talents are in the world. But the rabbis give her this incredible and pivotal role to play. She is the one who's entrusted to communicate this deeply sensitive secret that, of course, changes everything. Right? It changes Jacob's life. And he thinks he is a bereaved father, and he learns in this moment that his son is actually alive. And it changes the course of the history for Jacob and his family, right? From this point forward, they go to Egypt, and the rest of the story continues. So Serach seems to have, or the rabbis seem to give her, this unique ability to hold on to sensitive information and then to communicate it to Jacob in a way that he'll be able to hear, in a way that will be attuned to the challenges that his heart faces in that moment. All right, turn the page. I'm going to sort of quickly try to walk you through the various midrashim, and then we'll ask some big questions about what these midrashim are all about. So now we are in the closing verses of this week's parsha, Vayechi, that we just read. So these are the last three verses of the book of Genesis. At length, Joseph said to his brothers, I'm about to die. God will surely take notice of you, Elohim pakod yifkod etchem, and bring you up from this land to the land that God promised on oath to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. So Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, when God has taken notice of you, again, pakod yifkod Elohim etchem, you shall carry my bones up from here. Joseph died at the age of 110 years, a reasonable age, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. All right, so the two things I want you to notice from these three verses. Number one, we have the repetition of a key phrase, in English translated as surely take notice of you. In Hebrew is pakod yifkod etchem. It's really the same word doubled. Pakod yifkod. It's the same word, just doubled and then grammatically shifted. And then the second thing is, of course, the instruction that Joseph is giving to his brothers on his deathbed, that at the end of this ordeal in Egypt, find my bones, take it out of the land of Egypt, and bring it to the land that God promised our fathers. Here we go. Another spun from nothing tale that inserts Serach into the story in a crucial way. This is from Shmot Rabbah, from Exodus Rabbah, collection of Midrashim. There was a secret sign handed down to the Israelites in Egypt, a legacy left by Jacob, who entrusted it to Joseph, and he again to his brother Asher, who handed it down to his daughter Serach. She was blessed with longevity, as we know from the Rashi. Oh, we didn't even look at the Rashi, but the Rashi implies that she was around for all those years. She was blessed with longevity and was living when Moses made his appearance before Pharaoh. The tradition was that the one who appeared in Egypt as the messenger of God with the tidings of their redemption would use the word pakad, demonstrating that God remembered where they were and saw what was done to them in Egypt. Okay, so there is a secret code transmitted from Jacob to Joseph to the brothers to Serach that the person who is going to redeem Israel from slavery in Egypt will use this special secret code word, pakod. And that's how you'll know that this is the person who's in fact the true redeemer of the Israelites in slavery. Right? Now, I stitched together two midrashim because they best tell the story together. So this is now from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. When Moses and Aaron came to the elders and performed the signs in their sight, the elders of Israel went to Serach, the daughter of Asher, and they said to her, "A certain man has come, and he has performed signs in our sight, thus and thus." She said to them, "There is no reality in the signs." In other words, right, Moses and Aaron, in front of the elders, performed the signs that God told them to perform, right? The turning of the staff into the snake, the revealing of the hand to have leprosy, and then making the leprosy go away. These are the signs that we're supposed to convince the elders, we're supposed to convince Pharaoh and his court that Moses had the backing of the one and true God, and Pharaoh better start considering to let the Israelites go. So Aaron and Moses performed these signs for the elders, and they go to Serach and they say, "That's what happened." She says, anyone can perform these signs. I'm not convinced. That doesn't tell me that this guy is the real deal. They said to her, "He said, 'Pakod pakareti,' I, God, have taken note of you." She said to them, "He is the man who will redeem Israel in the future from Egypt." Forthwith, the people believed in their God and his messenger, as it said, and the people believed, and when they heard that the Lord had visited, ki pakad Hashem, the children of Israel. All right, so what's happening with Serach in this story? What are we learning about her in this story that's getting layered onto the midrash that we first learned, with Serach playing a pivotal role in communicating to Jacob that Joseph was still alive? Here, too, Serach has access to this secret information passed down to her from her ancestors. Another text says that this secret code came originally from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, all the way down to Serach. And this secret information is what allows her to authenticate Moses, right? To support that this is the man with the divine backing for the mission that lies ahead. Serach is the link. Right? She has the information that could have been lost with the death of Joseph or with the death of the patriarchs. She holds on to it and then is able to reveal that information at a pivotal moment in which history could have gone in a different direction. All right, one more text about Serach to build the case of who she is. We've reached the end of the time in Egypt. The plagues are well underway. We're just about to have the 10th and final plague. The people are about to start their journey out of Egypt and into the wilderness. And the Torah records, this is Exodus 13:19, "And Moses took with him the bones of Joseph." Remember the final two verses of Genesis that we just read, where Joseph made us swear that the bones be lifted and taken to Israel, "who had exacted an oath from the children of Israel, saying, 'God will be sure to take notice of you,' again, pakod yifkod, 'then you shall carry up my bones from here with you.'" All right, so Moses has taken upon himself the oath that Joseph made his descendants swear that his bones will be exhumed and taken to the land of Israel. But we have a problem. A lot of time has occurred between the time of Joseph's death and the moment of the Exodus. Now, this isn't necessarily a problem, but the rabbis see here an opportunity. So listen to the story that the rabbis tell. This is in the Babylonian Talmud. How did Moshe know where Yosef was buried? They said, Serach bat Asher remains from that generation. Moshe went to her and said, do you know where Yosef is buried? She said, the Egyptians buried him in an iron casket and placed it in the Nile so that its waters become blessed. Moshe went and stood at the banks of the Nile. He said, Yosef, Yosef, the time has come that the Holy One swore that God would redeem them. The time has also come for the oath that Israel swore to bury you, Yosef, in the land of Israel. If you show yourself well and good, if not, we are free from your oath. Immediately, Yosef's casket floated to the surface. So once again, Serach bat Asher is the holder of this secret or hidden information that was at risk of being lost in the transmission of knowledge from one generation to the next, who helps Moses and the people of Israel fulfill this sacred duty owed to Joseph, right? To fully leave Egypt. Not to leave a part of themselves, a part of their identity, a part of their story in Egypt, but to fully leave with Joseph as well. All right, one more text. This is Pesichta de Rav Kahana. This is a 5th, 6th century text. This is maybe, I don't know if this is the quirkiest, but there's some interesting dynamics going on here. All right, Rabbi Yochanan was sitting in the Beit Midrash, in the study hall, and expounding the verse about the parting of the Red Sea, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. How could the water become as a wall, he asked. Rabbi Yochanan expounded that it was a sort of impervious net. Serach appeared. This is now the 5th, let's say it's the 5th, 6th century, or maybe you want to be generous and say it's the 2nd century when Rabbi Yochanan lived. Serach appeared in this Talmudic debate, right, in this study hall debate, and said, I was there, and the water was not as a net, but as transparent windows. All right, so let's just make sure we understand the dynamics of this text. This is a, let's say, 6th century text. Right? Rabbis in the 6th century writing, articulating an argument that maybe happened in the 2nd century or not. They have either some record of Rabbi Yochanan saying what he said, or they are inventing the fact that Rabbi Yochanan said this. And then the authentic response is the response of someone who was there. Right? But this is the rabbis of the 6th century putting these words into her mouth. Right? So the rabbis of the 6th century are saying Serah, who was there, has the final word on this matter because she saw it with her own eyes. And we believe her testimony over the conjecture of this 2nd century rabbi, even though the whole thing is the conjecture of 6th century rabbis. Are you with me? Okay. So the point here is not to assess the veracity of these stories. I'm not interested, and I suggest we not get caught up in the question of, did Serach actually do X, Y, or Z? Right? Did Serach actually insert herself into this Beit Midrash debate? Right? We're getting a character that the rabbis are imbuing with a specific meaning. Right? They're weaving a character from basically nothing in the Torah and giving her great significance and giving her this specific role, as I've suggested, as being the holder of this information that might be lost. So we've been exploring in these texts the question of who is Serach, but I want to flip the question. Who are the rabbis who are weaving this beautiful, strange, complex tale? What is driving their creativity? And by the way, these are, we looked at midrashim from different texts, different rabbis. So when I say the rabbis, I mean many generations of rabbis. What is driving their impulse to create this character known as Serach bat Asher? Right? Now, on the one hand, as we saw, there's a technical issue they need to resolve. You have this name mentioned in two times in the coming down into Egypt and in the wilderness years that presents this technical problem of this person who seemingly lived for a very long time. Right? But I'd like to suggest that, in fact, they are projecting a fundamental anxiety that's both specific to their project, the rabbinic project, and actually quite human, universally human onto Serach, namely the fear of lost memory, the fear that wisdom will not be transmitted from one generation to the next, a fear of a rupture of continuity. Wisdom that ceases to be is terribly frightening to the rabbis. Remember, these are the rabbis who essentially proclaim their mission statement in Mishnah Avot, in Pirkei Avot 1:1, when they say the Torah, Moses received Torah from Sinai. Here we're really talking about oral Torah, right? Not 5 books, but oral Torah is included in the divine revelation at Mount Sinai. Moses is told oral Torah by God at Mount Sinai, who transmits it to Joshua, who transmits it to the elders, to the prophets, and so on, ultimately to them, the rabbis. Right? The rabbis are the inheritors of this sacred story that they are charged with not forgetting. Right? More importantly, they're charged with transmitting. So that's in fact the whole reason the oral Torah gets written down, right? Is because of this anxiety that these secrets that lived only in the fragile state of oral wisdom would be lost because of the circumstances of history, because of failure to transmit, because of failure to listen, to comprehend, and so forth. Will the next generation know what they need to know about what came before them? So Serach is the sort of blank canvas that helps the present, or the audience of the present that the rabbis are speaking to, learn from the past. And the rabbis writing Serach's story are terrified that the past will be lost. So in this sense, I want to suggest, Serach is autobiographical for the rabbis. Serach is the rabbis' way of expressing their own fears and how they see themselves in light of being a chain in transmission. A character without a story, as my friend Rabbi Candice Levy told me, right, is a blank slate. She's the perfect vehicle for this story because we know nothing about her, and so she can be the person who the rabbis layer their story onto. Now, I want to say something. This is sort of a side note, and it's a little bit dicey, but I'm going to say it anyway. For anyone who is following along in the Hebrew, Serach's name, the spelling of Serach's name is changed. Now you go back to your text. In the Torah text, it's spelled with a samech. Sorry, with a sin. Sin, resh, chet, Serach. But in some of the rabbinic texts, in Shmot Rabbah, in the Bavli, it's changed from a sin to a samech. Now, I'm going to give you a homiletic interpretation of that, which I'm sure could be disproven by a linguistic analysis of the shift in letter. But Serach with a samech has a range of meanings. If you look this up in Jastro's dictionary, has a range of meanings, of contradictory meanings. Serach with a samech can either mean to extend or to stretch. It's like an overhanging. or it can mean to evaporate or to decay. And that's precisely the anxiety built into Serach. Right? Will the wisdom from before get extended into the present and into the future? Or will it evaporate in decay because of the failure to transmit? And of course, I've been focused here on the story and the character of Serach, but I want to bring it home to the personal. This is not just an experience specific to the rabbis. What will happen to my stories when I'm gone? Who will remember what you remembered? Are you the one in your family that knows all the family lore, or is there someone else who holds that responsibility? So here we are on the precipice of a new year, 2024. Some of us are engaged in the work of setting resolutions, right, thinking how to write a different future. And I want to invite us to consider that process by starting by writing the past. Instead of setting a goal for 2024, start by recording something from the past. Start small. One cherished memory. Send it to a friend. Send it to your kids. Maybe ask someone you love to do the same. Write their memory and send it to you. That's what my parents, that's what they did. Right? They wrote down a memory that could have been lost with the passing of Morris Salzer of blessed memory and Sophie Salzer of blessed memory, that could be lost with the eventual passing of my parents. But thank God they wrote it down, because they know that this story is integral to who I am and who I want to be. We can do that for our loved ones, and we can ask our loved ones to do that for us. And in this way, we'll all become the inheritors of Serach's hidden knowledge. Shabbat Shalom. Happy New Year.